Hey mama, you're listening to the Resting in Motherhood podcast with your host and new motherhood BFF, Brittni Maya. I'm a certified infant sleep specialist, but more importantly, I'm a mama navigating my own motherhood journey right alongside you. So join me weekly as we discuss the real, raw, and relatable truths of motherhood. We'll touch on everything from the ugly and difficult things we think but are afraid to say out loud, to the beautiful moments that uplift us and bring us so much joy in motherhood. So go ahead, take a deep breath, embrace the chaos, and join me for heartwarming conversations that'll leave you feeling understood, inspired, and ready to tackle whatever motherhood throws your way. Welcome back to the Resting in Motherhood podcast. I have a wonderful guest with us today. I have Andrea Haskins, a lactation counselor of Instinctual Mothering and also the co-founder of the Radical Moms Union. And Andrea, if you just want to give us a quick introduction, a little bio about yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me, Brittni. I'm Andrea and I'm a mom of two. I have an 8-year-old and an almost 5-year-old, and I'm here in upstate New York. And yeah, I'm a lactation counselor, and you can find me at Instinctual Mothering on Instagram. So I help women virtually that way in like groups and courses and with starting off breastfeeding. But I also am the co-founder of Radical Moms Union with Natasha, who just started out as, hey, do you want to start a Substack? I like all these topics you talk about on your Instagram. And now we are a full-fledged movement. We want to fight for the mother baby and keeping moms and babies together and kind of fight against different corporate forces that that separate moms and babies. So that's me.
I love that. I am all for kind of fighting against all of the industries, so to speak, that are all about separating mom and baby. And so if you could kind of go into, I know we talked about the Bobby campaign before we started, but some things that you've done with the Radical Moms Union and why it's so important to you.
Yeah, like I said, we just started as a Substack. And we're just writing about different topics that I was passionate about. So basically like a longer form of what I do on Instagram. And I started getting into, with helping people with breastfeeding, I started learning about like the history of lactation advocacy. I'm also a La Leche League leader, which is a local, well, actually they're international, but I'm my local breastfeeding peer counselor group. So if you're out there and you need help with breastfeeding, it's, they're in all cities. You might just have to like look it up. It's totally free. It's amazing. So obviously I'm looking into different forces and things that kind of get in the way of breastfeeding. And one of those was formula marketing. So I started doing just like research on it, and I just started talking about it on social media, and it's definitely like a divisive topic. So I guess that probably drew the most attention. So yeah, we started writing about different things like that. We'll write about different social media tropes and trends we see with motherhood, because so many of us are spending a lot of time on social media and it affects us. So we started writing about that, but then we started to think like, what can we do about this? And just started to band together. And like, it started with me and Natasha. Then we had like 7 other women that were really passionate about it. We're all from different backgrounds, political affiliations, religions, and everything, but we all are united on the cause of like mother-baby dyad. And we just start meeting with more and more women who are passionate about this. So last year and this year, we've done it for 2 years. We did like a virtual nursing, where women posted pictures of their, breastfeeding, and to speak out against predatory formula marketing. We've gone to one particular company's marketing meetings, and we've disrupted those. We've done that. But yeah, I don't know if you want to get into more stuff before I lay everything out with Bobby, or do you want to talk about other stuff first?
Well, I think what I would love to kind of dive into is because I think like I'm very much in line with you. So I know the predatory marketing, but maybe some moms are listening and they're like, well, what is this predatory marketing? So could you go into a little bit of detail about like, what are they doing, right?
Yeah. All right, let's back up because I just want to tell my story about why I even like started my account in the first place. Instinctual mothering is because when I was a mom, first time mom, I had anxiety and the desire to control everything and everything to be perfect and on a schedule. And of course, I fell down into like the sleep training rabbit hole of trying to schedule your baby and oh my God, the wake windows and letting them practice sleeping alone. And it destroyed my first postpartum. I like drove myself into postpartum depression, stressing about schedules, not being able to sleep even when the baby was sleeping. If I didn't buy into that nonsense, I would have been able to enjoy my postpartum that this time I'm never going to get back ever. Okay. I'm not having another baby. I don't have any do-overs. That's why I created my account so I can catch first time moms and tell them that all this stuff is bullshit. You don't have to, sorry, I'm not allowed to swear.
No, you're fine.
You don't have
to
listen to these sleep trainers and these people that tell you that you need to be separate from your baby. And I didn't necessarily I was not like a victim of predatory formula marketing, but we do have women in Rad Moms Union that were. And that's another piece. I was set up with a big support system before because I started going to the Leche League. So breastfeeding, I don't have that sort of trauma, the trauma I have with sleep training. I don't have that with breastfeeding, but they are along the same lines because a lot of the formula advertising use those same tropes. Like you can get more sleep, you can have a moment to yourself, you can, let dad feed, you can go to work. And these are tropes and advertising points that have been used since the beginning of formula advertising, like back in the 50s. So just to kind of understand what it means to be predatory, it's the same thing with the sleep training rhetoric. It's you have a mom who is vulnerable and sleep deprived and looking for any way to just like make her baby sleep or just, unsupported, possibly having to go back to work. And they're sold different lies about different products, whether that be formula or a special swaddle, in order to
or the snoo.
Yes, or the snoo, or in order for a large corporation to profit. So
Totally.
That's why it's predatory. Because like I said, women are unsupported. If they really want to breastfeed, they should get that support and they should get help in other areas of their life or mental health treatment if they need it. They shouldn't just be like, oh, here's formula. It'll fix everything that you're feeling and everything will be good if you just use formula. So that's the problem I have. So this one company, Bobby, and, a lot of these formula company tropes, like with the dad feeding and the doctors know best, those are super old. Like I was just looking at ads from the 50s and they're all like, doctor knows best and this is doctor recommended, which Bobby still does. And a lot of the formula companies do that. But when Bobby came on the scene, they really amplified this message sort of about breastfeeding, that it was bad for your mental health and they did all the same other things like, oh, you're going to get more sleep and you can have others help out if you formula feed. They still did that, but I think the new wave of formula marketing is just this sort of guise of being non-judgmental and being, oh, we're all just moms and fed is best, which we can talk about. And they really have kind of jumped on the bandwagon. Their marketing is super savvy. Their marketing is so good. Coming from a business owner, like I can tell they just do a really good job with marketing. So but they're giving women false information. So that's why we have a problem with it. Like false information about formula, saying that it'll help your mental health, saying that it will let you have more sleep, saying that if you combo feed, you can have more time with your baby. And so we have a problem with the misleading marketing preying on women at a very vulnerable time.
Totally. There's so many similarities between the formula market and the sleep training market. Same thing. Sleep training industry has done such an amazing job, although I fundamentally and wholeheartedly disagree with everything that they say. They're amazing marketers. Yeah. And even like I've seen people who work in the marketing industry in like different markets, and they have talked about how like everybody always brings up how good the sleep training industry is at marketing.
Wow.
Because yes, isn't that amazing that they are doing pain point marketing, but they're spinning it in an empowering way.
Yes.
Right? Like, oh, sleep training is for you. Switching to formula is for you and your baby. And what's really hard about that is I think a lot of us know about like birth trauma, but a lot of us don't think about kind of that postpartum trauma, because I related so much to what you said about your first motherhood experience. That's why I am doing what I do, because my first experience, when I had my daughter, it was the same thing. I was obsessed with the schedule. I was obsessed with the like eat, play, sleep. And I ended up with really bad postpartum anxiety.
Yeah. Eat, play, sleep is the bane of my existence. It did not work.
It's actually why I really got into this, because I was like, oh, eat, play, sleep. It's going to be so simple. I'm going to like feed her, and then she's going to play, and then she's going to fall asleep and all of this stuff. And then, like you said, it just took me low. And like you said, I can't get those moments back with my daughter. Like I was so stressed out. I was so anxious. I was not present with her. And this time that I now know should be this like restorative, beautiful, warm, slow time. I will never get that back, just like you said. And that's what we have to realize is we're sold this information in a very vulnerable time. And then oftentimes we look back and we do have a lot of trauma of like, oh my gosh, I wish I wouldn't have listened to that, right? Like I work with so many moms who did stop breastfeeding early on, and now they come and they have a lot of guilt of like, I wish I would have known. So I do want to acknowledge that, like to the moms who are listening, who are like, I fell prey to that. You did the best that you could in the moment with the information that you had. But yeah, it's just, there's a lot of trauma, I think, that nobody really recognizes after our babies are born, and that very, very fragile time as we're learning how to be new moms.
People obviously choose to use formula for different reasons, and that's okay. But we just want them to be able to make that decision without corporate influence, because
totally
now, even on social media, we don't really, I mean, you have to obviously hashtag ad, but sometimes it's unclear which is an ad sometimes and which is just, oh, your favorite influencer sharing their formula brand. And people, even if it is an ad, like things are very clearly ads, but that still gets ingrained in your consciousness and still affects you. So we need that information that you're going to make a choice to formula feed to be from an informed place, from people that don't have like billions of dollars. You know, they're in the game of whether you breastfeed or not. So like, you know, even Bobby, they'll do a lot of things that are education, or it's marketing disguised as education. And they really position themselves as the leader in the new brand of formula marketing with this whole like, we're neutral, we love breastfeeding, we love combo feeding. They've really just like, that's all that is a marketing ploy. And a lot of people are falling victim to that. They really like to position themselves as like, oh, we're just two moms who started a formula company. And people are falling for it. for our second nurse in. So like I said, we did on World Breastfeeding Week, we had hundreds of women post asking Bobby to stop disparaging breastfeeding in their marketing. And we tagged the investors that created Bobby because they like to masquerade as someone who's a company, like I said, that's mom led, but actually they had like millions of dollars of venture capital paid by these investor and like equity firms run by white male investors. So we tagged all of them in our campaign this year.
Good.
Because they also like to put on that facade that like they're not like other formula companies. So yeah, we just want moms to be aware that this is happening, and it's not really about formula versus breastfeeding moms. Like we have plenty of formula feeding moms in Rad Moms Union. They don't want to be preyed on either. It's like actually more important for moms who need to choose formula because certain formula brands are way more expensive for absolutely no reason. So why would you, why would you waste money just because of this fancy marketing? So yeah, it's really not about, breastfeeding versus formula. I want to make that clear. This is really just like about the marketing in general.
Totally. Well, and same thing with sleep training. Yeah. I'm all about making an informed decision, right? So if you've done all of the research and not just the one-sided education from the sleep training industry, and you decide, you know what, sleep training is for us, cool. I'm not going to judge you, but I don't want you choosing to sleep train because it's the only thing that it feels like your only option. Yeah. Similar to formula, right? But one thing, when you started talking about like the ads from the 50s, one thing that I think is really interesting that maybe a lot of moms don't know is formula came in the 50s because they wanted moms needed to start getting out into the workforce and being out of the home. And so yes, like you said, formula has a purpose, and some families it's their only option, right? Or like donor milk and all of that. But what I mean is sometimes formula is the option that a family chooses. But just because you're a working mom going back to work doesn't mean that you have to formula feed. Hey, mama. If you've been a longtime listener of the podcast, you will know that I often talk about how important a village is for us in motherhood. And did you know that in a traditional village, the ratio of women to children was 10-1? That means that there were 9 other women supporting one mom. 9 other women there to offer her guidance, offer a listening ear, hold her in the hard moments, and so much more. And so many of us are doing motherhood completely alone. We might have family around, but most of us don't have a lot of friends or family doing motherhood the same way that we are. They're probably not co-sleeping or contact napping or extended breastfeeding or doing whatever it is that we're doing, which makes motherhood feel really isolating. And as a mama who felt lonely for the first 3 years of motherhood and now has an amazing village of mom friends that I adore and give me so much life, I know just how important having a group of friends who are doing motherhood similarly to you is, which is why I created the Confident Moms Collective, a nurturing membership community designed specifically for moms who are doing things their own way. It's your place to rest and truly find confidence and community in motherhood. Inside the collective, you'll find the most badass group of mamas who are passionate about doing motherhood their own way. A group of mamas who are there to hold you, support you, encourage you, and grow with you. And you'll be there to hold them and support them and encourage them. And we're really creating that sisterhood and that village that we're all craving. And in addition to this amazing group of women, you're also getting a group chat where you can chat and connect with them. You're getting one live training a month hosted by myself or another parenting or development expert on different motherhood and parenting topics. You'll also be getting one live Q&A a month with me where you can ask me any questions that are on your mind and get personalized support. You're also getting access to a sleep and parenting resources library where I have done the homework for you. And now you can just go to the library and look up a topic that you're needing guidance or support in. We will also be doing a bi-monthly virtual mama meetup where you can come. We will just all have our coffee, probably our little ones, and we can just chat and connect and grow our friendships. And there is so much more waiting for you inside of the collective. So the collective will be linked below. I would love to see you in there. If you have any questions at all, shoot me an email or DM me on Instagram.
Yeah, that's a good point with the history of it. I've actually done a lot of deep dives on like the history of the development of formula, and it's very interesting. Actually, pediatricians were like the whole profession of pediatrics wasn't really a thing until formula came about, because people just generally like went to their family doctor, and they had like house calls where you see like in the old doctor goes to the house. But then when formula came along, and the reason it's called formula is because it used to be literal formula. Like if you like I just saw when I was searching formula ads, it was like a little card, and it's like a recipe for each individual baby. The doctor has to make it up depending on their weight, their height, what their nutritional needs are. So it literally is a formula, and they needed a new branch of doctors to be able to do this. And then when commercial formula started being made, meaning it wasn't just a mixture of milk, Caro syrup, and sugar, or whatever it was. When commercial formula started to be made, the doctors were like, oh, shit, like we have no purpose anymore. So that's why they started putting on the can, talk to your doctor for, preparation instructions. So the whole industry of pediatrics is sort of inextricably linked to the formula industry in ways I still see today. Like obviously you go to your OBs maybe, or you go to your pediatrician, and sometimes they will have like the formula samples, and they're not really supposed to. It's supposed to not be allowed. And this is part of the International Code for Breast Milk Substitutes by the World Health Organization. And they have regulations on advertising. And this is kind of the crux of why what Bobby's doing is unethical. Any formula advertisements are unethical. They're not really supposed to happen. In every other country besides us in New Zealand, formula advertising is illegal based on the WHO code, but we have decided not to adopt the WHO code. So that was because in the 70s, Nestle had the whole Nestle scandal where they sent formula reps dressed as nurses into developing countries and sold their formula. And then the babies didn't have clean water or couldn't afford the formula. The milk dried up and lots of babies died. So they made this milk code, and that's why it's unethical. And you're not supposed to even have advertisements. You're not supposed to see it in doctors' offices. You're not supposed to see it in hospitals, but it still is there, kind of depending on, you're not supposed to give free samples. Yeah, I have so many followers have DM me like, this just showed up on my doorstep when you register for Amazon registry or whatever. Like, you're not supposed to do that based on like the ethics of formula advertising. But like I said, the long history of pediatrics with formula companies is just kind of hard to disentangle. And that's why we see a lot of, and it's totally a toss-up. You could have a totally good pediatrician. We do. I have my pediatrician, she said she breastfed both her kids till they were 5. Like, it's totally dependent, but more often than not, I have people saying to me, my pediatrician wants me to supplement, blah, 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 blah. They don't offer any other referrals to an IBCLC or referrals to lactation. They, you'll see a lot of pediatricians on social media, even promoting formula, coupling with formula companies. Bobby does that a lot. They'll partner with pediatricians or doctors or even IBCLCs, which is against their code of ethics, in order to utilize this long-held marketing tactic of the formula companies and the medical institution. It's like, it's just tradition to for those two things to be together. And it's all kind of under the guise of inclusivity and non-judgmental, that sort of trope. However, let alone the fact that, like, yes, when you look at on a global scale, breastfeeding saves lives, and formula-fed babies have, more health problems, which is an uncomfortable fact. That's why it's unethical to advertise. But also, in this country, we have almost 85% of women starting off breastfeeding. They want to breastfeed. Like they're like, yes, I'm going to breastfeed. How many women do you know that have this horrible trauma, like you're saying, because something went wrong and they couldn't breastfeed? Like, that is heartbreaking.
So many.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah. I remember leaving my daughter's first, like she was a week old, first pediatrician visit. And I left the office with formula. And I'm like, I know that I'm breastfeeding. I never expressed an issue about my breastfeeding relation. Like, you asked how feeding was going. Feeding was great. She was gaining weight, and everything. And they gave it to us just in case.
Ugh.
Right. And now that I know what I know, I wish I could go back in this moment and be like, do not give that to me. Like, what are you, and no card for a lactation consultant, right? Or what are your long-term goals with breastfeeding? And that's what I think is so frustrating, is so many women. I think I was so lucky. And I think the only reason I breastfed till my daughter was 4. And I think the only reason I was able to do that is because my mom breastfed me till I was 18 months. And so I knew, oh my gosh, I want to be just like my mom, right? I was always really thankful for that. And so she was there supporting me every step of the way. But I really don't think that if I didn't have her support, I probably wouldn't have made it.
Oh, yeah.
Even through the first month.
That's so important. I thought you were going to say till you were 18.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you're like the people.
No, 18 months.
The people in my comments, that's what they think.
Yeah.
Are you going to go to college with him? I'm like, oh my God, shut up.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to note, you'll probably know this better than me, but isn't the average age of worldwide age of weaning 4 years old?
Yeah, it's somewhere between 4 and 7 worldwide. But if kids were all allowed to wean naturally, they say it would naturally happen between 2 and 5 years of age.
I think my daughter would have been 7.
Yeah.
If I would have let her naturally wean. But I got to 4 and I was like, okay, I have reached my limit. We're done here.
Yeah, it's hard to stop. My son will be 5 and he just kind of stopped. He still asks for it and I usually say no. It's just there's nothing coming out. He'll still ask for it, but it took a while. I thought I was going to have to cut him off hard, which I didn't want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even a year later, because we weaned at 4, she's 5. She just asked me the other day, when I have a baby sister, she's dead set on having a baby sister. When I have a baby sister, when you're nursing her, are you going to let me nurse again too?
Oh my God.
No, girlfriend. No. There's not even a baby on the horizon, by the way, either. But I love that they love it, right? They find so much comfort and love in that moment.
Yes, I love breastfeeding. That's why I became a lactation counselor. I just love how it gave me so much confidence in motherhood and so much intuitiveness in motherhood. And I want all these moms to have that. I don't want them to be
totally,
oh my God, I couldn't breastfeed and now I feel guilty and I feel shame. I think we've gone too far in the opposite direction where we're everything you feel guilt about, you have to feel good about. You know what I mean? Instead of giving these women support and maybe try to change all the future women's journeys, we're just going to say fed is best and don't worry about it, which to me means your goals didn't matter. Who cares if you wanted to breastfeed? It doesn't matter. So in what other area of life do we do that to people? If somebody doesn't finish their degree, we're who cares? It doesn't matter. Why did you want to do that anyway? That's stupid. Why would you say that to somebody?
Totally. Or another thought that I just had is after a traumatic birth, people will often be well, at least you and the baby are safe.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but let's unpack that trauma, right? And I think so. It's funny because I was going to say to wrap up, let's chat about fed is best. And you naturally went there. So
Yeah.
to kind of, wrap up, fed is best. What are your thoughts? You kind of already just said what your thoughts are, but if you want to dive into that a little bit more.
Well, there's Fed is Best, the organization, which started that. I talked about that on my
slogan.
Yeah, I talked about that on my podcast a couple weeks ago. They are just like an organization by two doctors and IBCLCs, and they have a lot of trauma. They've had babies that maybe breastfeeding problems went undiagnosed, and it's become this whole like blaming breastfeeding when really it was maybe lack of education and also like failure on the hospital's part. So that's that organization. But the term, like the slogan fed is best, you just hear a lot, and it's meant to be like empowering, like, oh yes, you're still a good mom if you formula feed, which is true. But when you're saying fed is best to someone who like wants to breastfeed, it's not very helpful. It's just like saying, well, at least you're healthy. That means, or at least you and your baby are healthy after the traumatic birth. It kind of tells them that what they wanted doesn't matter and they should just be grateful for whatever they had. So, fed is best, I think, is just kind of like I said, it's just like a slogan. Like, you don't have to take every experience you have guilt about and like shove the guilt down and shove the shame down. You can kind of process it and think about, like, because that's how I did, like with sleep training. Like, yeah, I tried to sleep train my daughter and I feel guilt about it and it sucks. So I want to help other women not do that. I want to help other women not have to be told fed is best, because that doesn't help them.
Totally. Yeah. And that's what I think it boils down to, is moms need that education and support. And I work with so many women who come to me and they're like, I don't think I'm making enough milk. And really what it is they're expecting like, oh, my baby's waking up every 2 to 3 hours to feed at night. I must not be making enough milk.
Yeah.
And when I tell them, well, that's actually biologically normal for your baby to wake every 2 to 3 hours at night to feed, it's like this relief, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, like I'm not doing anything wrong. It's not my milk, my body. Because that's another thing I think is, if you're sold that narrative, and sometimes there really is an issue with production, but if you're sold that narrative of you don't make enough milk, then there's also like shame around your own body, right? Like, well, why am I not making enough milk? And so I think that's the key piece, is for moms to get that support and that education. And so if you had a mom in front of you a new mom who is struggling with breastfeeding, like what would you tell her?
Well, I like to get women educated before they have the baby. That way they can be confident, because like you said, when that anxiety creeps in, when you're postpartum and you're vulnerable and you're like, oh my God, I have no idea if this baby is eating or what. I don't know what to look for. And then the doctor hands you formula and you're like, oh my God, yeah, like this is from the doctor. This must be good. And it kind of like soothes your anxiety that now you know the baby is being fed. So my big thing was that anxiety about, like, how am I supposed to know? Like, I can't see a measurement of milk going into her. You know what I mean? Like, so I had to learn the signs of what it looks like when a baby's eating, and then learn to trust my body. That's why when you have the information, you can trust your body from the outset. And instead, a lot of women are getting information like, oh, it's just complete luck if you can breastfeed or not. And you just never know what can happen. My milk, you always hear like, my milk just never came in. You always hear that. But if you know how it works already, then you can be prepared for that. And you're like, okay, baby's pooping. She's having her diapers. I can hear the gulps going down. Just because she's waking up every 2 hours doesn't mean I have no milk. So you can just like deal with the anxiety in a way that is because you're empowered and you're confident.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and I think that's it, is being empowered. Yeah, I think that I just wish we could, like you said, meet all expectant mamas and hey, if you, like you said, if you meet an expectant mama who's like, I don't want to breastfeed, okay, cool, great. Like that, you make that decision because that's what works best for you. But if you want to breastfeed, I want you to have every single possible chance that you have to be successful.
Yeah. And even if they, I also, when I said about misinformation, I do think some women are maybe making the choice to not breastfeed based on misinformation too.
True.
So
true.
Yeah, if someone has already made up their mind, like I'm formula feeding, I won't say anything, but like I will combat myths like on social media about like, because if someone's like, oh, I don't want to breastfeed because I want dad to feed, I'll talk about how that is kind of a myth and how you can work it. Or I don't want to breastfeed because my boobs will be saggy. I hear that all the time. And I sort of combat that. But yeah, I just want people to be informed. Like it's so much harder when the baby's already here to learn all this stuff. I actually have a breastfeeding course that I have for pregnant moms. It's like a community and it's a course. So I'll give you the link for that.
Perfect. Yeah, we will link it in the show notes. And I think that's so helpful for expectant mamas.
Yeah.
We are wrapping up now. Is there any like last minute wisdom or anything else that you would like to share?
Well, if you want to get involved with Radical Moms Union, our campaign against Bobby is not done. We actually met with the founder, Laura Modi, last week. So we're making moves. Our main goal is to get them to stop bashing breastfeeding in their marketing. Like stop talking negatively, stop advertising to breastfeeding moms. Like advertise to people who want formula, not moms who want to breastfeed. So that's like our goal. And we're always looking for people if you want to join the fight. So follow at radical_moms_union. I'll give you the handle and find out when our next meeting is.
Okay, well, I will look it up myself and I will be there. So all of your Instagram will be linked below. We'll also link Radical Moms Union below. And I just want to thank you so much for taking your time to be here today, but also thank you for fighting such an important fight for moms.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let's meet up next week too. Make sure to subscribe to the Resting in Motherhood podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Want to continue this conversation? Head to the show notes for this episode at restinginmotherhood.com/podcast or connect with me on Instagram at resting_in_motherhood.